What is up, YouTube? I'm GOAT74 here, bringing you guys week 10 of the PTL. This week we were taking on Gremlin, coach of the Southend Stoutlands. We are going into this game with a 6-3 record, while my opponent is going into this game with an 8-1 record. To recap what happened last week in the PTL, we did lose again in our second week in a row. It was a game that we could have played better, but in the end we were just losing, and it could have been a lot better, but hey, it is what it is. I underprepared for Amon, and I got punished for it. That is a quick recap of last week. This week we face Gremlin, who is the best team in the whole Sword division. He's an insane battler, and this is not making our life any easier because this is getting really close to the end of the season, and there are a lot of teams that are 5-4, 5-5, depending on when their battles have been done. So we need to start winning so we can have some separation between those teams. Again, as I mentioned, this is our second game in a row we have lost, and on top of the other games we have been losing on the channel, this is going to be a bit of a rough one just because of all the momentum, not for my side and for Gremlins, so it's going to be a little bit hard in that sense. In regards to our matchup, it's pretty 50-50 in my opinion. There's a lot to explain to it, so I'm just going to jump right into his team and this team builder. My opponent Gremlin has probably some of my favorite mons in draft history on this team. He has a team consisting of Excadrill, Hippowdon, Hatterene, Crawdon, Salazzle, Rotomo, Shuckle, Mantine, Cursola, and Silvally Normal. Now I expect him to consist of Excadrill, Hatterene, Crawdon, Salazzle, Mantine, and Cursola. He could bring Rotom if he wants to pivot around my team, that or Silvally, because they're both pretty good at that job. And Hippowdon's a decent physical wall. The reason I don't see Hippowdon maybe fully coming is, now I'm going to transition to my next point, is Excadrill I feel like it's going to be Mold Breaker this week. Definitely Mold Breaker and either Band or Scarf, one of the two. Even Swords Dance, but probably Band or Scarf. This thing is a big threat to my team because Mold Breaker ignores Levitate, and that automatically means that Rotom Wash and Weezing both lose to Excadrill. My team has a really hard time dealing with Earthquake spam when you take away the Levitate ability, and that's something I definitely have to watch out for. I only have really one good switch in, maybe two sort of, in this game, so I definitely have to be a little bit careful about that. Switching into his team is really hard as I will continue the trend. Salazzle, you guys know how much I love this mon. Salazzle is really good against my team. Slap a Specs or a Life Orb on this thing and it's going to go in. If you guys watched my 8 p.m. game this week, you saw how much Salazzle put in some work. It broke through a Porygon 2 that was especially defensive, so Salazzle's a good mon. Crawdon is also really hard to switch into. It's a little bit less threatening just because I can offensively beat it relatively easy compared to Salazzle. It just, Aqua Jet Crawdon is hard because then Cinderace doesn't fully beat it in that sense. But Crawdon doesn't have the greatest defenses and it's kind of slow, so it's still a threat though. And then finally, I could see my opponent bringing the Hatterene, Cursola, Trick Room late game. Cursola is stupid hard to switch into. Hatterene is as well, but I think Cursola with Shadow Ball spam just claims kills late game if everything on my team is weakened. I definitely have to watch out for that and try to avoid having Hatterene set up Trick Room as much as possible. That's going to be a little bit of a tough task, but hopefully we can prevail out. And those are the big threats on his team, but I just mentioned a bunch of mons right there, so I have a really hard time switching into his team. If he just brings a fully offensive team that breaks, I could easily see myself losing this game. Luckily, I do have a sort of crystal clear win con in this game. I have it written down here. I get a Spike Up, I chip his Sandcore a bit, and then Linoon gets in and belly drums and wins the game. That's basically the game plan there. Hopefully it prevails. Outside of that, I don't really have the greatest ways to beat down his team. Gliscopod has a pretty good matchup, but overall it's just like, here, I don't know. But that is basically the rundown of my opponent's team. What I am bringing this week consists of Cinderace, Gliscopod, Appleton, Rotom Wash, Vanillux, and Linoon. First up on the team this week is going to be our kill leader in Cinderace. Cinderace is holding the boots, enough speed to outspeed Salazzle. Moves being a Powerball, U-Turn, Zen Headbutt, and Court Change. Court Change is there just in case he brings the Shuckle. I really don't think it's coming, but if he does want to go the Rocks and Webs route, I have a way to get rid of those and just send them back on my opponent's side. Powerball is really good here, especially because Hippowdon's just a maybe in my head. I really did want to go Band, but with Mantine running around, and I know Mantine's coming. I have a good switch in, but I still would rather want to U-Turn out, like Powerball or U-Turn. I'd rather do that in the end. This just blows past a lot of his mons like Cursola, Salazzle because I have the Zen Headbutt, Rotom. It doesn't kill Hatterene, but with a little bit of chip it does. That's why I wanted Band. And an Excadrill if it is not Scarf or speed boosting. So I felt like that was really nice. And then U-Turn is just to pivot around my opponent's team, like the Rotom if it wants to come in. The Mantine I can pivot out on, Hatterene if it's not low enough for Pyro Ball. You get the gist. It's a really good pivot, as it usually is anyway. The only thing that sucks is that I can't 1v1 Crawdaunt because Aqua Jet exists, and it does so much because it's a Crawdaunt. So I have to watch out for that. Next up is going to be Golisopod. Golisopod is max attack adamant with a decent amount of speed and a little bit of HP with the Splash Plate. Moves being a First Impression, Liquidation, Aqua Jet, and Spikes. This is a really weird set for me because Golisopod's really good in this game because Bug plus Water Spam is really solid against my opponent, especially because I have the Splash Plate. Liquidation does a ton to my opponent's team. He can't stay in with stuff like Rotom with First Impression running around. That's same with the Crawdaunt. It doesn't want to stay in because of First Impression. I do have to be careful because this is hard-walled by Mantine, but the thing that makes Golisopod so weird in this matchup is because I wanted to kind of clean late game while Linoon breaks, but I also wanted to get a spike up really early, so it might take a prediction or two to do that. I don't really want to lose all my health on Golisopod just to get a spike up. Otherwise, it's really good. I just have to be careful with the Mantine because it's just so good against my team. Forcing it to defog, though, would be pretty nice overall. And Aqua Jet does like 65 to Excadrill, and that's just an insane amount of damage, to be completely honest. But that is Golisopod. Third up is going to be Appleton. The second week in a row it's coming. Absolutely wild. It's max defense again with the leftovers, but instead of having Draco this week, it has Body Press with Apple Acid, Leech Seed, and Recover. This is asking for Salazzle to come in, so I am a little bit scared in that sense, but this was my Earthquake switch in. As I mentioned, Scarf Excadrill was just really scary against my team, so this was my best way to sort of deal with it. This does hard check the Excadrill every time, but I do have to be careful with the Salazzle running around, especially because I don't have Rhyperior on this team. It does invite that thing in for free. Same with Hatterene to an extent. Hatterene doesn't like to take Apple Acid, but of course it can, and then set up Trick Room and do all that stuff. So I have to watch out for a few things on my opponent's side. Leech Seed is just for general recovery against stuff like the Mantine, the Crawdaunt, because I can always touch Crawdaunt for a lot of damage. It's Appleton's here to just stay around for a while and make sure Excadrill doesn't get out of hand. Fourth up is Rotom Wash. Rotom Wash is a specially defensive set with a Chesto Berry, it's Resto Chesto, moves being a Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, Hydro Pump, and Rest. This was really good. I needed Rest because I know this is my switch into Mantine. It's a really good wall to it, and Mantine's going to click Toxic basically when it comes in, and I know at some point I'm going to rest it off, and I'd rather have Rest of Chesto as opposed to Pain Split so I don't get Toxic stalled by Mantine. So that's pretty cool. Same with Hippowdon. Hippowdon's really only way to touch Rotom Wash is through Toxic or Whirlwind, and Whirlwind's not really a big deal, and Toxic, again, Rest of Chesto. This can beat the Crawdaunt. I don't really want to switch into Crawdaunt, but I can 1v1 it pretty easily. This is my best switch into Salazzle, but Sludge Wave still does a load of damage to me, so I don't know if I really want to be switching into it consistently. Mantine is a problem because even though this is like the best way I have to deal with it, and it's a really good, effective way, it's one of my only two ways to really deal with it. So I feel like I'm going to need Rotom in this game. And with Excadrill running around with Molt Breaker, Earthquake, I can't be staying in on that thing either. So Rotom has a pretty important role this week into dealing with the Mantine that is 100% coming. Fifth up is going to be Vanillix. Vanillix has got a bunch of EVs on screen. Aurora Veil, Taunt, Freeze Dry, and Explosion with the Light Clay. I'm very skeptical about this set because I love offensive Vanillix as opposed to the Aurora Veil Light Clay set. But since I have a Linoon, I feel like Aurora Veil is necessary for this scenario. Freeze Dry is really spammable against my opponent's team. There's not really many mons I want to take it except for like Salazzle and I guess Shuckle to an extent. But this is really good. This is my other way to deal with Mantine just because Freeze Dry nukes it, does a lot of damage. Crawdaunt, I have enough speed to outspeed Crawdaunt. Explosion just to get, like, if I don't need Vanillix and Mantine's gone, I can just explode after I set up Aurora Veil and get Linoon in, and that would be really nice. Taunt is to prevent stuff like rocks from Hippowdon if I'm in against it, or just Rotom Mow from clicking Will-O-Wisp or something like that if I want to like go into Linoon later. It's very supportive Vanillix. I'm not like, again, not the biggest fan because I love offensive Vanillix as opposed to defensive, but I felt like defensive was just better in this matchup overall with the Aurora Veil. And then finally we have our win con of the week. We have Linoon. This is standard belly drum set. It does not have Stomping Tantrum, but it does have Shadow Claw. There's a few rolls on this thing. This thing does not break through Shuckle whatsoever, but again, Shuckle is not that great against my team overall. Seed Bomb does 80 to 94 to Hippowdon. That's max defensive, so I have to chip that down a bit. Same with Excadrill, but with E-Speed. E-Speed does 80 to 94 for the most part. It's roughly around that roll, so I need to get like a spike or two up or a little bit of chip in order to beat those two mons down. But the good thing about Linoon is that Belly Drum I can set up on a lot of mons, like Mantine, Cursola, Silvally. This is all with like Aurora Veil, to be fair. Salazzle, unless it's like Toxic Sub, then maybe not. Rotom Mow. There's so many different mons I can set up a belly drum on, so that's really the positives with Linoon this week. I just have to chip down a few things on my opponent's side before I'm able to clean with it. I did want to break with it, but it might end up becoming cleaner in the end. I don't know. It depends on what he brings. But that is going to be my team in a nutshell. I'm not sure how I feel about this just because I have a defensive Vanillix. But I feel like Linoon is really nice here overall. Cinderace is always pretty decent, even if he does have a Hippowdon and a Mantine. But that is going to wrap it up for the team builder. We're going to head over to Pokemon Showdown, and we're going to watch the battle. Alright, we have arrived on Pokemon Showdown, and my opponent did not bring the Cursola or the Crawdaunt, but did bring the Hippowdon and the Rotom Mow. So I'm going to keep that in my mind. In regards to the lead, Cinderace looks stupid good as a lead here, so I'm definitely going to lead that. I can U-turn anything that I'm not good against, and I can Powerball anything else. He does lead off with the Rotom Mow here, which is fantastic for me. I can fire off a free Powerball. I just want to see the damage on like Mons that come in, like Hippowdon. So I'm going to click Powerball here. I do 30% to this thing. I do get a burn, which is really nice because now this Hippowdon is doing basically no types of damage to my team. So I do apologize for that, but Cinderace is just so good. This is a very defensive Hippowdon. I still did 30% to it. I'm going to go to Vanillix. I'd make it a little bit of an aggressive play just because that the burn did happen, as he just throws up rocks. Now I am going to get up my Aurora Veil kind of early here, which is kind of nice, but I should have gone for probably Taunt here, as I do set up an Aurora Veil, as he just throws off a Toxic, so that kind of sucks. But Aurora Veil is still pretty good here because he's doing a lot less damage to me with all his other mons. It's just Taunt would have been better because he clicked Toxic, obviously. Here I'm just going to click Freeze Dry and try and get as much damage on the Hippowdon as the Salazzle comes in. Salazzle doesn't take a crazy amount of damage, but Chip is kind of nice for this thing. I don't want to stay in because Vanillix is still pretty useful for later, as I'm going to go out into the Rotom Wash. With Aurora Veil, I'm not really too scared of this thing, especially because he just clicks Flamethrower. It does borderline no damage to me, so that's fine. I do expect him to go out into either Rotom or Hippowdon as he goes out into the Rotom, so that's fine. I do Volt Switch out, and I can keep the momentum up against my opponent, as I can just go right back out into Cinderace. I can click Powerball again. If Hippowdon wants to come in, it could be a 2-ko. If Mantine wants to come in, I can just U-turn afterwards. As Hippowdon does come in, it's going to take 30% roughly, probably. Unfortunately, I do miss this Pyro Ball. That really sucks. I do think 30% was kind of a high roll earlier, but the potential to have a 2-ko there would have been really nice to get rid of Hippo early. But I can't, even though I can probably live Earthquake, I can live Earthquake. I don't want to take it, so I'm just going to go into Vanillix here, as my opponent just goes for Slack Off. So it would have been a war I would have lost anyway. But now I can fire off a Freeze Dry at this point. His Hippowdon is taking a little bit of burn and hail damage. Instead of firing off Freeze Dry, I'm going to go on a Rotom though, expecting him to just fire off an Earthquake as he does. I kind of want to kill off my own Aurora Veil turns just so I can get more up again. It's not the greatest idea because I have rocks up on my side of the field, but it is something. As he goes to go out the Rotom Mow, I should have Volt Switched here, but I do click Hydro Pump just trying to get rid of Hippo. Wasn't the greatest move, but I do get a little bit more chip on this Rotom Mow, which could be a little bit helpful later on. As I'm going to switch out on Appleton here, I don't think he's going to click the Volt Switch, but he actually does click the Volt Switch, so good on him. I thought he'd just try and go for the Leaf Storm this time. As now he goes out into the Salazzle, and I'm like, uh-oh, something's got to die here. And looking at my Vanillix's health and looking at his team, I should have gone out on the Vanillix here, but here I go into Cinderace, man. And he clicks Sludge Wave, and I die. That was a crit. I'm going to spoil and let you guys know that this is a Spec Salazzle, so the crit probably didn't matter. It was like a 93% chance to kill me, so realistically, I don't think it mattered. But that was so big because there's rocks still up on my side of the field. If I would have lived that hit, I would have just changed it and then had rocks on their side of the field, which would have been absolutely huge. As this turn, I should have set up a spike knowing that Salazzle beats down my entire team and he wouldn't risk it. So just in the span of 2 turns, I basically throw away the entire game. I lost so much momentum in those 2 turns just because I made 2 really bad plays again. Kind of like my game against Brett. One good thing that comes out here is I can rest their Chesto pretty freely against the Mantine as Rotom Mow comes in. And now I can take a hit from Salazzle at least, so that's kind of nice. But I made some really bad plays there. It's because Vanillix was not really doing too much as I tried Volt Switching out here as Hippowdon comes back in. This Hippowdon being around is just kind of annoying in general, even though it's not doing a crazy ton, it's just being kind of annoying. I don't want to take any more damage because I still want to take the hit from Salazzle if I need to, so I'm going to switch out into the Vanillix here. Hopefully he stays in and clicks like Earthquake because it won't do anything because he's burned. But he does make the nice play and goes back out in the Rotom. And this is what I mean by saying that I should have just sacked the Vanillix because I can't get Aurora Veil back up, and Vanillix just goes down to the Rotom Mow. So it's looking really bad here. I didn't get a spike up or didn't chip down his staying core. And at this point, I'm just like, screw it. I'm just sending out Line Noon and clicking the button. I know I can live any one hit from this thing. He's actually not Scarf like I thought he was. But in this case, it doesn't really matter too much. I just learned some information. As he goes down to a Powdon, I do click the belly drum button. Now, he is at 84%, so the Seed Bomb is a roll, but it is heavily in my favor just because the roll's like 80 to like 92. So he'll be back down to 84 here. As I do click the Seed Bomb button, and Hippowdon lives the hit. And I'm like really annoyed. It didn't really matter because E-Speed, Excadrill guaranteed lives it unless I crit it. So realistically, all I had to do was go out to Excadrill the following turn and revenge me that way. It's just annoying because that roll was very heavily in my favor, and I got absolute min roll. I was really salty about it, but at this point, it wasn't the biggest deal in the entire world. As Hippowdon is still around at 6%, and I'm really annoyed that thing's still around as Rotom just comes in. I am chipping down his Rotom, which is really nice, I guess, for a Golisopod endgame, even though I need Golisopod and Rotom, because Rotom beats the Mantine, while Golisopod still can beat everything else, potentially, but it's not going to be an easy ride here. As at this point, I just need to start clicking buttons as I send out Appleton, my least useful member, as he voltages out into the Hatterene. And I'm fine with that as I click recover just to get health back. I should be faster than this thing, assuming it is Trick Room. So I'm going to fire off an Apple Acid and get some chip, which I do get, which is pretty nice. As it does 31%, it gets a Spit F drop, as the Hatterene sets up Trick Room. So at this point, it's not looking too hot. They fire off a D-Gleam, I do die. They are Life Orbs, so that is a pretty high chance to kill me anyway. And now I have to go into Golisopod and click First Impression. First Impression is a roll in their favor, but it is a roll as they live it, of course. And my Golisopod is going to die to the Psychic that comes out. And it's going to be a double down because of the Life Orb. That's really annoying because the rolls aren't really going too hot in this game. As at this point, the game's over because all I have is Rotom, and he still has like everything in the back. I can't beat everything with Rotom, as I just fire off a Hydro Pump. It doesn't even do like barely anything to Rotom. And your Northside Noiverns are going to lose their third straight game in a row in the PTL, and we are going to drop to 6-4. So GG to my opponent Gremlin. I am aware that I had lost by turn 13 basically just because I threw out my Cinderace for basically no reason, but with how I have been playing as of late, not getting rolls that I should be getting, or at least losing 50-50s on a consistent basis, has been a little bit demotivating, and it just adds some extra salt in the wound, and making some games that are still pretty fun, just a little bit less fun. I did play mediocre to somewhat bad in this game though, so that is something I had to accept. I did play the early game, I think, pretty decently, so I will take like credit for that, but in the end we still had to hold the L. Again, GG to my opponent Gremlin. We are going to move down to a 6-4 record and -2 differential because on this channel we don't know what good differential is. We do have 2 games left in the PTL. I do have some good news for you guys. The GOAT Crusaders, the team I am on, have clinched first place overall for the season, which is great. That means we have guaranteed 6 playoff spots, so 6 of our 10 members are guaranteed to clinch. However, we are 7th best of the GOAT Crusaders, believe it or not, so we aren't clinched a playoff yet. However, with the way the playoff system works, there's the 2 best teams that aren't included in the team system that I explained in last week's video, I think. They can still make the playoffs, and actually right now, as I'm recording this video, I think we're the best team not included in that whole team system. We're not clinched for a playoff spot yet, but it's still looking pretty good. We just have to win one of our next 2 games, if not both of them. There are a lot of 5-5 teams, as we're 6-4. We're barely hanging on by a thread, so we definitely need to start winning games. Next week we do face Will. He has a Necrozma, and ironically, the way I do my battles is that my APM game coming up on Monday, I do that battle the same week I do my PTL battle next week, and both my opponents had a Necrozma, so I prepped for 2 Necrozmas this coming weekend, and it was just a whole fun time. So hopefully next week we have a good time against the Will, but you never know. We're going to need to win a game basically. And that is basically going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you guys for watching so much. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. If you like Pokemon Draft League content, consider subscribing to the channel. I'm out of here. Have a fantastic day, YouTube.